Hi guys, welcome back. My name is Jaspreet and today I'll be showing you how I make these cute little leaf dishes. So this is a simple hand building tutorial, but it's actually going to be two parts. Today I'll show you how to make these, and then in another video I'll take you through the various glaze combinations that I've tried here and show you how to do these. Now the main thing to remember is, obviously, if you have access to a kiln, you can use a stoneware, porcelain, whatever clay, low fire, high fire, whatever clay that you can use that. But if you are somebody who doesn't have access to a kiln, then you can do this project with a air dry clay or your oven baked clay as well. The only thing that you have to remember is that air dry clay and oven baked clay is not suitable for food and liquid. So you can use these, you can make these, but you can use them for decorative purposes and little jewelry dishes, ring dishes, and things like that, but just no food and liquid. It's not food safe. That's about it. Otherwise, you can definitely do this. And also, the second part, when we go on to glazing, obviously, I'm going to be talking about ceramic glazes. But if again you're not somebody who uses ceramic glazes, you can always use acrylics and do different combinations and then seal them up with varnish. So that's all I have for the intro. I think we should get started. I'll be using a white stoneware clay. So here's my slab of clay. This is rolled to a quarter of an inch thickness. And this is a smooth stoneware clay, white stoneware clay that I use. Now, because you're going to make something really small, I am going to thin it down a little bit more. You can thin it down with your rolling pin and go over and roll it and thin it down. I'm just going to lift and slam, lift and slam. Just a couple of throws on my board, and I think I'm good. That's about it. That's all I need to do to thin it down a little bit. Now I'm going to start with compressing the clay using my yellow Cheryl mud tool rib. I'm going to go over and compress the clay. Lift and flip. Again, the same thing. All right, that's my clay compressed. Next, before I cut out the leaf shapes, I am going to release the clay from the board, because when I'm cutting my leaves out, I don't want those smaller slabs to be stuck onto the board and I'm picking and peeling each and every slab. So I'll just release my slab from the board. Now I'll go in with my cookie cutter. This is the cookie cutter that I'll be using for the leaf. I will list a few options that you can pick from. This is the one that I have. I'm going to use this. So I'm just placing it starting at the edge. I think we'll get a bunch of leaves here. Now, if your clay is too soft, you can actually add a little bit of cornstarch to the clay surface or your cookie cutter. Now, this is metal, it will stick, but at least you'll get a few cuts and then it'll start sticking. Just clean it and continue. Then I'm cutting the same leaf shape. We'll make some fall leaves and we'll make some spring leaves. So you can pick and choose what you want for your leaves. I mean, the fall and the spring will be decided by the glazes that we use. Otherwise, I'm not really going to be particular about, what kind of leaf this is, though I think this is maple leaf shape. I don't know. All of this clay is going to get dunked in water and placed into a recycling bag, which I'm going to veg and use again. Okay, now that I have all of these pieces cut out, we now have to clean them up and start adding the leaf details, the veining and things like that. So I'm just going to bring my binding wheel here, bring this here, pick one. With a damp sponge, I'm going to go over the edge quickly. Now, some people like to use plastic when they cut with a cookie cutter. Like you have the slab, you place the plastic on top, and then you cut. And I think that's effective too to get a nice smooth edge. I know I'm going to do this in any case, irrespective of whether we use plastic or not, because it's just my process and I enjoy doing it in a way. So I'm just quickly smoothing the edges here. And while it's flipped over, I'm going to add my signature before I add the veins. Okay, flip it over and time to add the veins. Now for this, I'll be using my silicone tip tool. This is my favorite tool to do something like this. And I do it freehand. I'm not very particular. I just go in and start creating the veins in the leaf. Again, I'm not trying to be precise, A. B, also I'm not trying to really replicate what they actually look like in nature. I'm just doing what I like. And it usually works. It doesn't matter, right? There you go. That's my one leaf veining done. I'll be doing the same thing for the others as well, and probably that will be on a fast forward so you can see what I'm doing. And then we'll move on to the next stage where we'll start shaping these. Okay, so once we have our leaves done, the veining done, the next step is making them into little bowls. Now there are a few different ways you can do this. I mean, they're not really bowls, they're little dishes. You just need to raise the rim up. Now there are a few different ways of doing that. So for example, this clay has stiffened a slight bit. So I'll show you one way you can do it. For this first technique, just make sure that your clay is not too floppy. I mean, this is nice and soft, but at the same time, if I lift the sides up, they're going to stay, right? This is one very easy way of doing this. Just lifting the sides up like this, and you make it into a little dish form, right? This way. Just make sure all the sides are up, right? You see this? It's as simple as that. You don't need any other additional special tools and stuff. This is one way where you just go around. Obviously, if you have a banding wheel, it's easy to just roll it. Just keep turning it around and lifting the sides up, and you get more or less uniform. Let me show you. More or less uniform kind of a little dish. That's one way. Okay. The other way is, again, bringing my slab here, just releasing it from the board. And then I've made these little bisque molds from different size, bowls and stuff that I have. And I use these to shape my smaller pieces, dishes and small bowls, right? So I'm going to just place this. This is bisque clay, so it is absorbent. I can just place it right here. I'm just trying to see it's more or less entered. Looks okay, right? And then lift and flip. Place this back here and just press this around the sides. In terms of the amount of time it takes, it's honestly the same amount of time it will take for you to lift those. The only difference is that this has to be slightly stiffer, like the way we made this, lifting the edges of your hand, it has to be slightly stiffer um, so that it can stand on its own and not just flop down. And for this, again, you're just doing this and going around. These will be a little bit more uniform because there's a form underneath which is holding the shape. Those won't be as uniform, but again, they'll still be, as pretty and as useful as these. So that's one. I can actually, because this is too small, I can just lift it and place it back here, right? So this is the one which is made using the foam, and this is the one which you do with your hand. Fairly similar, right? So there's not much difference there. You can use either of these techniques. So it's very simple project, goes really fast. So I'm going to quickly do all of my leaves. And if you do not have a bisque mold, you can use a small bowl as well. The only thing you have to remember is that if it's a plastic bowl or if it's a ceramic bowl, it has to be flat. That means no footring. Like these are flat. I've made these are flat, right? There are no footrings here. So no footring. And because it's ceramic or plastic, it will be non-absorbent. It will be shiny, glossy surface, and your clay will tend to stick. So just add a layer of either a small cloth or plastic in between, even paper for that matter. Problem with paper is, especially if it's a stiffer paper, that it will make marks on the clay. Plastic, not so much. Cloth, maybe a little bit. So those are things which happen, but otherwise, again, if you don't press too hard, it will work. You don't need to worry about the marks from plastic and the cloth. Okay. For this step, don't wait for your clay to get too stiff. I mean, it should be again stiff enough that it can hold on to its shape once you mold it to this little bowl shape. But at the same time, it should not be too stiff that it doesn't, it just starts cracking and breaking around the rims. Though it's a small piece, it won't happen. But again, sometimes it just gets a little bit annoying to press down stiffer slabs, and they tend to, get those light cracks around the edges. This is nice and soft, and this is working perfectly all right. You'll see every time I place the mold on top, before I do that, I just release the clay from the board because because you made the veins on top, it has stuck to the board. So just release it so the flipping is easier. Another tip that I have for you, and this was suggested by one of the members in my membership, Deb. So if you don't have, easy access to kiln, like if you go to a studio to fire stuff, and making these tools looks a little tricky. Like first you make a tool, you bisque fire it, and then you bring it back, and then you start making the actual pieces. What you can do is you can make these kind of tools with, oven baked clay or air dry clay as well. So air dry clay doesn't have to be fired. It will stiffen up on its own. Obviously, it will not be as sturdy as this, but it will work as a tool. You can continue using it so long as you don't press it too hard or drop it. It will work. And same is the case with the bisque piece as well, honestly. So you can use air dry clay or you can use oven baked clay. Oven baked clay is a clay which you use, which is fired in an oven. At oven temperatures you can do it, but again, for that kind of clay, I would suggest that you get a separate oven to fire your clays in, and not the same one you use for food, just as a precaution. I've never done it, I've never used that clay, so but in general, that's what I hear people say, that you should not fire the same, and it makes sense. So that's another way you can make these kind of tools. Thanks to Deb who suggested this, and I think that was a brilliant idea, because initially when I didn't have access to kiln, I mean, I did go to a studio for firing, I think once. There was a time when I wanted to go back, and a couple of times actually I used a couple of different studios for firing, and I realized that I wanted to make these tools, but I was like, oh my god, I have to first make this tool, fire it like a mold, and then come back and make the pieces. That's like too much effort. And at that time, it didn't strike me that I could use air dry clay to make my molds and stuff. So smaller molds you can definitely make and use. I don't know how strong it will be for making bigger molds for platters and plates. If, some of you have tried it. If any of you has tried it, let me know. But these kind of things, like these bowl molds, they can easily be made with air dry clay. So that's the last one. So now what I'm going to do is let it dry slowly under a plastic. I know it's a smaller piece, but I'm going to still dry it under a plastic for a couple of days. I'm not going to weigh it down because it's small piece, so this doesn't make it much sense weighing it down. But they'll be dried under plastic for a couple of days, and then I'll leave them out for another few days till they're completely bone dry, and then they'll go into bisque firing. And once they're bisque fired, then I'll be back and I'll show you how we glaze them. We make some spring ones with greens, and we'll try a few different glaze combinations for the fall, and some just for fun. So that's a plan. One more thing I'll do is, as they dry, once they stiffen up a little bit, I'm going to go over the edges one more time. If you see, the edges are not entirely smooth, and for me, this doesn't work. This doesn't cut it. So once they've stiffened up, where they won't lose their shape, I'm going to go in and clean up the edges one last time. I really enjoy this process of cleaning off the edges, just sitting in and going over the edges. It's just something that really enjoy about this pottery process. So I always do that. uh, Obviously, one is I enjoy it, secondly because it helps finish the piece. The piece looks a lot more finished in my opinion, so I'll do that as well once it's stiffened up. So I'll be back with bisque pieces and we'll play some of these together. All right, guys, that was the video for this week. I hope you enjoyed it. It is a very simple project and it's a lot of fun. You can make a whole bunch of these in a really short period of time. And these things tend to do really well at markets and in-person events. Also, if you are a beginner or if you're somebody who's teaching beginners, this is a good project to start with. You get to understand your clay a little bit, you get to understand some of the tools, and also you get to glaze them in so many different ways, which we will be doing in another video soon. That's all I have for you this week. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like, subscribe, share, and I'll see you next week with another video. Bye for now.